Hello, and welcome to another episode of Tech Time Today. My name is Jeff Whelpley. I am your host, and with me, my regular guest recently, Jesse Vu. Jesse, why don't you say hi?
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm Jesse. And in case you haven't seen anything else, I'm a computer science student at Worcester Polytechnic Institute, my senior year, and I'm very interested in this kind of new big, AI explosion that we've seen recently. And thank you to Jeff for having me on to talk about it. Yeah, so from my understanding, just based on reading the news and staying in touch, Anthropic they've been using, I think, in production or whatever. They have this new model called Mythos, which is supposed to be like much more powerful than any of the other models they released previously. I think it has almost like double the software engineering benchmark score as Opus 4.6, and it seems to be really like a step above kind of everything else we've seen so far in today. And where it's coming into the news is mostly through I believe Anthropic researchers have found that it discovered security violations, and I think it was the Linux kernel. I'm not sure exactly, but like in a lot of very like high fidelity software. So and there's kind of this new like ethical uh, discussion that's being brought up along with the knowledge of the model about how can it be used, how do we use this, is it dangerous, and that is leading to a lot of the conversations that we're having today.
Yeah, and some of that I think might not make sense to people that might not know some of the background of stuff, even like non AI related. So, just taking one quick step back for some of the security exploit stuff, there is this ongoing thing with a lot of major companies, major open source projects, major tech companies, where they encourage white hat hackers to kind of like test the limits of their software and let them know, like they actually provide bonuses. It's a very common thing in the industry that like if you tell, like if Microsoft Windows, you find some exploit, you find some way of hacking their software, and you let them know, then they'll give you money. And obviously, uh, reasons for that so that they, as opposed to like publishing on the internet, or somebody who has nefarious purposes utilizes that for bad things.
Yeah.
And so with some of, not, I mean, they do so many things while they're developing these new frontier models, but one of the things has been like, okay, let's try all this stuff. Let's try to see how capable this model is of doing various hacking of different systems. That's been a typical thing that they've done for a while. And so I guess in this case, what they're saying, and I'll get to the aspect of this of
Yeah.
whether what they're saying is true or not. But what they're saying is that this model found all these ways to exploit. I mean, it didn't say which software, it didn't say how it did it or whatever. Which actually doesn't mean that they're lying in that, because the standard is when you do find these exploits, you don't want to let everybody know exactly what it is yet. You do eventually tell them, but you have to wait until the core software is patched. I mean, that's why they have most major software companies have these security patches. I mean, that's what it comes from, is that they find these exploits and then they're doing the security patches for all versions of their software to make sure that exploit can't be used anymore. So it's like they have the fix out, and then they'll be like, okay, this is how we did it, right? Now, uh, no idea whether that's true or not, but like the other funny aspect of this is I've seen a lot of like commentary of like, oh yeah, sure, like it just is a pure marketing mechanism for like, if you're Anthropic, it's like, oh, our new software is so good
Right.
that it did all these like crazy things that I can't prove,
Exactly.
or whatever, you know.
Yeah, I think I saw something like an article back from like when we had like when it was like GPT-2 about like, oh, like GPT-2 is going to take over the universe or something like that. Like very like hyperbolic title for something we know now was still like definitely like a leap in technology, but not definitely not like delete all your passwords, destroy your computer level of security breach. So I'm interested to see if it's really more on that marketing side, or if we are kind of getting to a new frontier of like real security concerns with this stuff.
The world economy is sort of relying. If you look at the S&P and I forget the exact stat I read the other day, but it's something that if you take out the different AI companies, um, like we're arguably in a recession.
Hmm.
That like there's been a lot of downward trends over the past year plus or whatever. But obviously, like the open AI, the AI related companies, there's a lot of investment. There's a lot of like building growth and whatever else. Um, and then OpenAI, Anthropic, and OpenAI have been raising tons of money. Office OpenAI just raised another 122 billion round. I think you mentioned that they might be looking to go public, or at least that's rumors or whatever. Um, but like it's like, is this a house of cards? Like, obviously we you and I are both bullish on like the technology and like where it can go,
Hmm.
but it seems like the economics of it right now is potentially built on like a house of cards to some degree. Like maybe in the long run you can, assuming that the technology does advance in the way we think, that there will be continued growth there overall. But is there going to be some issues in the short term where you know some of these AI companies, even if they stall a little bit and the growth of other companies don't help out, the economy as a whole might suffer in the short term. I don't know. Yeah, you might not have like looked into some of this stuff, but
Yeah.
did you have any thoughts on this, Jesse?
Yeah, I mean, I want to preface everything I say by saying I'm not by any means like a financial analyst or an economics guy, but um, I can speak from my perspective as like a student going into the workforce, and the perspective of like talking to a lot of my friends and classmates about being senior computer science students going into the workforce. And there's definitely kind of like a negative outlook right now, at least just kind of at the job market. We're all waiting to see. I've had people I've talked to say, yeah, we're really just not even hiring. We're just waiting to see if this whole AI thing works out. We don't have to hire juniors anymore. And like all there is a lot of money in this stuff, and it is it's there, and it is in AI, but it's kind of doesn't feel very accessible to people kind of like my generation right now. And all we really get to see is the kind of the job shortages that are being created, and the rest of the rest of the economy not being amazing. And obviously, there's other political factors that that are contributing to that, but it does there is kind of a um, like pessimistic outlook for a lot of seniors and graduates, especially in computer science right now. And I do again. I like as we said, we're both very like I'm very passionate about this technology. I think it's very interesting, and it's kind of changed the way that I've approached being a computer scientist. But um, I don't think like large language models themselves are enough to become the entire United States economy. I think that we have other things that we need to focus on as well. Not just like building more compute or building better technology or models, because I think eventually, just as the cycle of technology moves on, we're going to get you know go further and further into the future, and I really just don't see AI being able to hold up the entire United States economy.
When most companies right now are doing more with less and laying people off or whatever, that's never a good sign. Like you need to get to the place that, and forgetting about all the other specifics of what and how and where or whatever, like just that dynamic of there's a lot more hiring, like the job market is very active, like and there's a lot of opportunity out there one way or another. Like we got to get to that, right? But like I think it's basically comes down to two things. One is figuring out where and how to draw that line between what humans can do well and like what you want humans to be working on and doing that the technology doesn't do as well for whatever reasons, and there's lots of stuff you could say for that, like anything kind of like human emotional, like things that like AI will never be able to do.
Mhm.
Um, Versus like obviously what AI and technology as a whole is good at. And right now it's just hard to draw that line. Like
Yeah,
that's
definitely.
one of the biggest issues, and people are drawing it in the wrong places. Like I think a lot of
Mhm.
businesses are making mistakes, to be quite frank, in the way that they're laying people off and thinking that they can rely on the technology almost too much, right?
Yeah, I
Um,
completely agree with that. Um, I don't really have too much more on this really, but like I think that, like I was saying, it's a mistake to just completely replace everything with a AI, because I, another thing that I kind of think is interesting is who takes ownership of that, who takes ownership of the work that the AI produces. Is do you have like a guy whose job it is to like coordinate a swarm of like 10,000 agents and he's responsible for everything? Like
mhm.
it's a rethinking of kind of the structure of how we run computer science businesses, and it's
Yeah,
I don't think
I'm
anybody's
in
really
a
there yet.
I'm in a CTO forum with mm, I think it's like 18 other Boston area CTOs, and the thing every single one of us talks about and is not sure exactly how to do is how to set up their organization to optimize things in the right way of like their development processes, their you know um, what their teams are working on, how they're using AI, like this thing that we're talking about, like how to figure out all the best practices. It's so um, new that you talk to 10 different people are going to give you 10 different answers of like
Right.
where those lines are, but and normally, I mean, this is maybe where it's going to be different with this technology shift than in previous ones. In previous technology shifts, like let's say the industrial revolution, um,
Way
where
back in
there's like a
time.
big yeah. The there's new technologies and it caused massive disruption, and it actually caused similar issues to the ones that we're having right now. But the difference is that it was okay, a big shift, but then it sort of stabilized, and the technology did. It wasn't like a exponential growth. It was like a big jump, and then there was like kind of a plateau where people had the time to kind of like figure out like okay, make some adjustments. This is now we're going to work in like more of a factory setting, and we do need employees to do this instead of what they used to be doing before. And obviously, it takes time for transition. There's like cost in that, and there's some downturn, but then eventually it turns around. The one thing that I'm worried about with this current, um, you know, technology jump is will there be that sort of time ever where you are able to like take a breath and then people figure things out? Because if it just keeps on getting more exponential, then you keep on losing your ability, as a you're running your company, you're just struggling to keep up. Like you don't even know how to best utilize your own workforce or utilize this technology, and that's the way it is right now. um, but maybe not in the future. Maybe things will plateau off and stabilize, and then that's where we'll see people being able to like define this fine line better, and then that will eventually lead to growth again. As you're like, okay, now we know what we want humans to do versus AI, and we can start to build around that. And then the last thing, and I'll end this segment on, sort of the second of the two things I mentioned,
Mhm.
is it's just very unfortunate that most companies that I know, and there's many reasons for this, but the mindset they have is how to accomplish, like they have a set of goals that they've had for a while or whatever, for years, and a certain way of thinking of like this is what we do, this is what we're trying to achieve. And now since the technology is better, they're like, oh, I can achieve those goals with less, so let me lay off everybody, right?
Yeah.
It's unfortunate that they don't view it as an opportunity to raise the bar. And I don't quite understand why. Like, there's some people who are doing that. Some smaller companies, like my company, is for sure doing that. Like, we're doing so much more than before. We've definitely, raised the bar. But that's smaller companies. It's easier to do that.
Hmm.
With larger companies, you just don't see a lot of them. Like, other than the actual AI companies themselves, you just don't see a lot of them. Like, okay, we have these more capabilities. No, we're not going to lay people off. We're going to like get them to do like 10 times the work, and we're going to like kill it in these other areas. For any given service or offering, there is a certain amount of value that a customer, a user of that service or product offering or whatever gets, and that value comes from a number of sources. And so, where if I'm building a new company, if I'm building a new product or service, um, what am I contributing to that value that is above and beyond or different than the underlying technology? And this becomes, it has huge implications, and is something that I know for sure almost every entrepreneur that I know is like thinking about that. In particular when it comes to AI, that because it's becoming more and more capable, I start working on some software project that builds on top of AI, and then the next model comes out, and or they the AI companies themselves come out with some new product that basically just blows it out of the water. Now, this isn't something new. Like, Google has actually been doing this for a while.
Yeah.
Like, Google has, it's a very well known thing of how many startups they've killed because of some new product that they like leverage their sort of, not monopoly, but like their asset, what Google search and other assets that they have, to then take on new spaces. Amazon does it as well. um, but it's just different with AI. Like, if you're using, you're building on top of AI, like, there is this sense of unease among entrepreneurs of like, okay, like, this is great, like, I'm going to build something cool, like, I think that I am providing this unique value that the underlying technology won't have, but then all of a sudden it's gone. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah.
So, like, yeah, what's your take on this, Jesse, of like how to figure out where we're helping to provide the value, like, on top or different from some of the underlying technology when it's, like we talked about, growing so exponentially?
Yeah, so I think when I kind of started playing around with all this stuff, I was really interested in the idea of like an orchestration layer, like building like my own like graphical interface for managing different kind of like different agents and um, kind of like a visual tool really. But as I was developing it, I was like, oh, like working around, playing around with different ideas. I kind of got to, I kept running into like the roadblock of like, okay, this is cool, but like it's already easier to do this in a terminal, and I'm not really like providing that much value with my kind of graphical with my user interface. Like, it's cool and I like it, but it doesn't, like, as a product, I don't really see it adding much value to just using the TUI or whatever. Um, so what kind of I conclude from all of that is I think that what's going to be more and more is sort of like bespoke technology, almost like something that's more individually tailored, because these like large large companies, Anthropic, OpenAI, what have you, they can make the best kind of general use software. They make the model themselves. They make Claude code, Codex. They're doing all that. And if you try to make kind of like a general thing, like kind of like OpenClaw, even like OpenClaw is a pretty general. It's for like scheduling cron jobs or looking through the internet, and that's all stuff that as we can see from Claude, like replicating a lot of those features, that is a pretty general use case that these companies can emulate. But I think a lot of the value comes from integrating these big tools and these big kind of frameworks into kind of like a smaller business, or like how, this is what I've been seeing a lot of too, is like people um, creating setups that work for like a user specifically, not like a general product. And I guess that's sort of the idea of like software as a service, as like in like general, is like creating like. But I think with AI and because it's so broad, because it's so general, um, I don't think every company or every potential customer needs all of the features of like every single available Anthropic feature or every single whatever. Um, they more so need a system that works for them, and I think that is where there can be, you know, because it doesn't make sense for these big companies to like make a feature just for like this local company that works in my hometown of Boston. That doesn't really make sense to them, but it would maybe make sense more for me to do that, or for a
Mm-hmm.
smaller entrepreneur. So that's kind of where I'm at. I think that you know, if you make something that's too general, it's just going to get snatched up. Is my like is my what I've been seeing kind of through the evolution of all this stuff. But that's kind of where my head's at. You're the actual entrepreneur here, so I'd love to hear your take on it.
Yeah, no, I agree with a lot of what you're saying. The way that I forgot whether I read this somewhere or someone
Mm-hmm.
mentioned it to me, but in ideal case, you want to be in a position where updates to the core model only like make your product even better. It doesn't challenge or
Mm-hmm.
make it irrelevant
Right.
anymore, right? But that's easier said than done. A couple things like areas for at least, I mean, I can't say forever for sure, um, but at least for like the next couple years, I feel pretty good about saying that it'd be the case. So hardware,
Mm-hmm.
for sure. Like, yeah, there's obviously going to be at some point like hardware slash real world stuff. Like, at some point they'll have, I'm sure. I mean, there already are robots and pretty advanced robots, but the cost is like so astronomically high. Like, it's going to be a while before you have like cheap enough robotics that like
the
any kind of real world thing.
the
What's that?
Optimus the Optimus robot butler, like the humanoid robot that
Yeah,
like serves you coffee or whatever. Yeah, I think we're pretty far
yeah,
away
I
from
mean,
that.
like you could do that, but like, I mean, whatever.
Yeah,
It's ridiculous, like to
yeah,
think that that's gonna be economically feasible or whatever. So like,
yeah,
I feel pretty confident about like
yeah.
any service that includes like a real world thing. Like,
Mm-hmm.
there's definitely opportunities there. Okay. Um, the second thing is uh, compliance related stuff. So like, there's a lot of things when it comes to like government, like compliance slash regulatory, um, that they actually actively, and I'm starting to get into some of this with the work that I'm doing now, that um, I mean, just very strongly, like you need to have humans in the loop, like absolutely, like as a matter, like it doesn't matter how good the AI is, like it's never gonna, it'll help to some degree, but it's never gonna fully um, trust how what. I mean, humans make mistakes too, but
Mm-hmm.
like just like there's certain things that just like won't change we're talking about the next couple of years. So like a lot of those, soc 2, HIPAA, like PCI, like those various compliance things, when there is some type of service that requires those things, that in my opinion presents opportunities for these entrepreneurs building stuff that is above and beyond it and won't be touched, or won't be kind of like replaced, I should say,
Mm-hmm.
by AI, at least in the next couple of years. I feel like, but that leads to like the last one I was going to say, which is the products or services where the level of quality matters. That like, or basically, if you're providing a service where the distinguishing thing is a certain level of quality, because whether it's the quality of a user interface or the quality of like, let's say, a emotional support service or whatever, there's always going to be some rung of that service that is good enough for people, and that is fine. Like that, they're doing something good enough is there's lots of money in that,
Oh yeah.
but there's also money in the high end, like
Yeah.
where it's just like, okay, that is not good enough for me. What I'm saying is like, if you're thinking about trying to distinguish yourself, like and build things above and beyond what the kind of underlying technology is, focusing on that high end
Mm-hmm.
is a potential way to go, because you can always utilize the existing technology to the maximum and then build on top of that. Like you're providing this extra on top of wherever it can get you, like for in whatever field it is. Like I'm giving you something even better.